everyone, my name is Jenna, but you guys can call me Jen, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my popular books I read in 2021, and are they worth it? In 2021, I am filming this currently on December 14th, so so far I have read, I believe, 135 books this year. And I'm not like a huge person to fall into like the super hype train and like immediately go out and buy books that are like being just pushed on TikTok and pushed on YouTube and whatever. But I will say that I only really find my book recommendations on BookTube and Bookstagram as well, a little bit. That does not mean that I don't fall trap to reading popular books. So this year I read a bunch that I think could be considered popular books, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry if they're not like super popular books. I have kind of hearkened these as like the ones that are super hyped or ones that are really well known, not necessarily released this year, but just in general. And I'm very excited to kind of talk about them today and tell you whether or not they are worth it. I got my bullet journal with a list of books in different categories that I'm going to talk about. Let's start with probably the most popular category, which is YA, just in general. This includes YA fantasy and contemporary books as well. Let's talk about the first one on my list, which is Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas. This I originally read for my Reading BookTube's favorite books. I was following Joel from Fictional Fates' their favorite books of 2020, and I was very excited to read Cemetery Boys, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I think this popular book is definitely worth the hype. It is a lovely, heartfelt, kind of spooky, great for spooky season, YA, kind of urban fantasy. So it follows a trans boy. Oh, actually, I just scrolled down. I gave it 4.5 stars, not just 4 stars. So it was very, very good. So it follows Yadriel, who has summoned a ghost, and now he can't get rid of him. Yadriel is dealing with the fact that he wants to become and wants to officially become a brujo in his family, but because he is trans, his family doesn't want to let him. So it's that whole ordeal, and then he's also dealing with the fact that he summoned a ghost in his attempt to become brujo. So he goes through the ceremony himself with his best friend to prove that he could do it. He does do it, but he also summons a ghost in the process, and they fall in love, which is very, very cute. So yeah, Cemetery Boys, quite worth it, I think. Next up, I also read this for the same video, is These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, and this might be an incredibly unpopular opinion, but I did not like this book at all. The characters were awful, and I just didn't love the storyline. It was a lot of like telling the reader that you should believe these certain things in like about the characters, but like not actually showing those aspects of the characters a lot, especially with Juliet. It is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, which I don't love that story. It's one of my least favorite Shakespeare things ever, but it's just, I don't know. I didn't like this book. I don't see the hype. So in my opinion, it's not worth it. So I ended up giving it, I think, 2.5 or 3 stars. And like in retrospect, it's probably only a 2-star for me. It was not good. Up next is one that's probably not necessarily a super popular book right now, but it is one that like everybody knows about, and that is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. And this one, I have been so scared for years to read this one, and it's just been on my physical TBR. I've almost unhauled it like 3-4 times, and I kept convincing myself not to because I knew if I devoted my time to it, I would love it. And I did. I did love it. I gave it 5 stars. It's one of my favorites of the year. It broke my soul into pieces, which is what I knew it was going to do because it is a World War II book that is told from the perspective of death, and it follows a young girl who is the book thief and her life in Nazi-occupied Germany. And she's a little German girl, but it's her family's involvement with the war and the Jewish people. It's heartbreaking as hell. And I don't have my physical copy with me right now, but the last like chunk of it, my pages are physically warped from my tears. It is so worth it. If you are really looking for a beautiful, heartbreaking, but hopeful novel that will make you cry, go with The Book Thief. That one is 100% worth it. Up next, I don't really know if this one is popular really anymore, but when it came out, it really was. It took the internet by storm for a little bit, and it was picked up by Reese's book club, Reese Witherspoon's book club, and that is The Firekeepers Daughter by Angeline Booley. This one I was so excited about because it was just an absolutely beautiful cover, and it was pitched as a indigenous thriller with like deep family ties and all this kind of stuff, and I went into it expecting a thriller came out of it realizing that it is not a thriller. It is a slightly suspenseful YA contemporary novel. If it had been pitched that way, I think I would have gone into it expecting what it was and would have enjoyed it a lot more. This one I only gave 3 or 3.5 stars. I can't remember exactly, but I did enjoy my reading experience. It was quite good. There was a lot of waffling in some places. It's a very long novel for what it is, and I didn't love the relationships in it, but it was good, and I think it is worth it if you go in knowing it is not a thriller. It's not, very much not. Sure, there's like suspense and action with it and in places, but it's not a thriller. It is not a thriller. I'm gonna just keep saying that. It is not a thriller. Don't go in expecting this one to be scary or thrilling in any way. It's a little suspenseful, and it follows Donis and her life in her hometown and the nearby Ojibwe reservation, and it follows her kind of drawn in with undercover agents of some kind. I can't remember if it's the FBI or not, who are trying to like root out the source of a drug problem in that area. So it was quite good, but I was expecting something completely different from what I got. The overall experience of reading it was fine. I did enjoy it though. So yes, it's worth the read. Up next, I'm going to talk about Ace of Spades. This is one that I read recently in October because this one was quite the popular one when like leading up to the release and everything after. People absolutely adore this book, and I think for the right reader, it is worth reading. For me, not at all. I really didn't love this book very much. I gave it like a 3-star for what it did. For enjoyment, it's probably a 2-star, but for what Farida Abike-Iyimide does with this story, it is probably a 4-star. So in between those two, a 3. This definitely deals with big racial issues and systemic racism and that kind of latency in schools. There's that. I didn't love it though. I didn't find it scary. I didn't really like the characters all that much, and I didn't feel like we connected to them at all. And I don't like reading about rich kids. I don't at all. So there's that. But yes, if you are someone who likes reading about Gossip Girl-esque, like high school kids and this like unknown anonymous texter who's going around and like likes reading a lot of YA type of stuff like that, definitely give it a try. It is worth it. But if you're someone who doesn't really like to read a lot of that, I would say not worth it. Whoever you are. Whoever you are. It is a very loved book though, so I will say that. Let's move on to the adult category. Why not? This is the adult category of books. The first one on here is The Song of Achilles. I don't even have to find that on my Goodreads because this one is definitely worth the hype. 1000% in my eyes. Definitely worth it. Definitely pick this up if you want to cry. The Song of Achilles is so beautiful. It is a retelling of the myth and legend of Achilles and Patroclus, his lover. It is their love story, and it is about the Trojan War and all that wonderfulness y'all know. And it is just so beautiful. Like, honestly, Madeline Miller, the author, she can do no wrong. Like, I read Circe first and I didn't love it, but I think upon reread, I might love it even more. So that's one that I'm going to be rereading hopefully in 2022. And hopefully she comes out with a new Greek retelling, because I've read now all of her work, even her short story release that was a retelling of, oh, what is it? All I'm thinking of is My Fair Lady. But it's that the idea of the man who sculpts his perfect woman and she comes to life as a sculpted perfect woman. She did a short story or like a novella. It's like 30 or 40 pages on that, and I can't remember the name of it. Song of Achilles, 100% worth it. Fall into the hype, expect to cry, or at least expect to be crushed in some way, because like, even though I thought I remembered the myth of Achilles, I remembered it wrong. I got it conflated with a different myth. The myth of, I believe, Hyacinthus and Apollo. I believe I confused the two of them. And when I was reading it, I was like, I want to check. I want to Google what the myth of Achilles is. But I was like, no, don't do that to yourself, because you're just going to spoil the ending. So even if you're not like super into Greek mythology, it's very, I find it pretty easy to follow because I feel like Circe would have been harder to follow, which is the other one that Valen Miller wrote, because Circe has an overabundance of really, really familiar names if you know Greek mythology, but if you don't, you're going to be so just like, I don't know what's going on kind of vibes. So I find the Song of Achilles more approachable in that effect. And of course, the Song of Achilles is just beautifully written. So yes, 100% worth the hype. I gave this one 5 stars. It's a favorite of the year. The next one I have is Act Your Age, Eve Brown, or in this case, the Brown Sisters trilogy, which is that romance trilogy that was blowing up all over the internet. Act Your Age, Eve Brown was the one that I read this year and I believe was released this year. And it is, I think, my favorite. It's like just a little bit above Chloe Brown, but I also love Chloe Brown because Redford is like he's my favorite romance hero ever. Act Your Age, Eve Brown, that one is definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. 100% worth your time. It is so fun. It is lighthearted and it's sexy and it's got autistic representation in both our main characters, and it just, oh god, I love Talia Hibbert's writing, and yes, 1000% it's worth it. Read those books if you are at all inclined to read romance books. Read them. They're so good. The next one I have on my list is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, and this one is 150% worth your time. If you love romance novels and if you love books about queer people, read it. It's so good. It's got a little twist of magical and time magic, and it's about August and Jane who fall in love on the Q train in New York City, and oh god, I loved this book. It was just exactly what I needed at the time, and just like with her Red, White, and Royal Blue, it just hits so good. It's funny and it's lighthearted and it means so much and just hits you right in the heart and the soul, and it was so good. Read it. 100% worth your time. The next one is Mexican Gothic, and this one I know is like a really popular book on the internet, but I don't know if I would say it's super worth it. I liked it enough, so I will say sure, give it a try, but I won't like overly recommend it in any way, because even though I'm not a super versed person in the thriller and horror genre, I tried to be this past October and I read a bunch of them, and I didn't really find that this one stood out in any way. It was, even though I don't read a lot of thrillers and horrors, I found it like I knew what was going to happen and like kind of where it was going, and it was eerie, and I did like the beginning more than the end. But I will say it is probably worth it because most other people love it except for me, so there is that. Sure, it's worth your time. I don't even know anymore. The next one on this list is Planet Barbarians, which I did read this year. I read it because my friends forced me to in our monster book club that they decided to start, and it's the only book that we've read so far, and I don't know if we will read any more, but it's like across one of our larger group chats, and we decided to read Planet Barbarians, and no, this is not worth your time. No, I think I gave it like 1 or 2 stars. It's not good in any way, shape, or form. It sure is entertaining in a way, but like, God, the line of consent in this book is so thin, and it was uncomfortable. And it like got rid of one of the girls, because it follows this like spaceship of girls who land on this planet with these aliens there, and they're like have only a few days to survive because the atmosphere is going to kill them and whatever. To survive, they have to go through a like process to make them like the other people. On the way to this planet, this one girl gets raped by the aliens that are like driving this aircraft. They aren't the same aliens as the ones on the planet, but they crash land on this planet, and the girls are the only ones like left alive. Ruby Dixon kills off the one girl who would have been an issue in the consent way near the end, because it was too easy to convince all these women to kind of go over and have this big bodily change happen to them. But the only girl who probably would have brought up any kind of conflict was killed off. She was frozen to death in the snow, which I find terrible. So the issues of consent in this are not great. No, not great at all. And it's just weird. awkward. I didn't like it at all. It was not a good time, but the discussion was fun. So no, Planet Barbarians is not worth your time. Don't even bother. There's much better weird romance books out there for you. And then the last one in the adult category is Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This one is a thriller that I think is definitely worth your time. I went onto Kayla from Books and Lala's list and I looked at all the Riley Sagers that she has read and I picked the highest rated one from her, which was Lock Every Door, and this one was fantastic. I definitely think it's worth your time. It's creepy, it's eerie, and it has a pretty satisfying ending, and it has like enough where the ending, you find out what's happening, but there's still a lot of scary stuff that happens after it, which is exactly what I like in a thriller, I've come to find. But yeah, definitely worth your time, that one. All right, let's move into my sci-fi and fantasy. We'll do the two sci-fis first because, as you guys know, I didn't read a whole lot of sci-fi this year. Actually, there should be 3 on this list. I forgot about one. We'll talk about that one first. That is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. Now, if you want to read an adult Hunger Games set on Mars, this one would be worth your time. Most people, in fact, everyone that I have seen read these books or have read these books has absolutely adored them and adored the characters that are in the books. I didn't like it. I had issues with the pacing. There was no why in the story. And our main character is the worst. I don't understand why people like Darrow at all. So in my opinion, it's not worth your time. But in the opinion of everyone on the internet, it is. So take my opinion with a grain of salt. That's basically what this video is. Just take my opinion with a grain of salt. The next one is An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. Now this one surprised the hell out of me. This one is definitely worth your time if you want to read a sci-fi book that is set in our world, that has a like more of a contemporary tone and a look at media and what being in the limelight does to people, while still having like this kind of a weird unknown in the background with the Carls in the Absolutely Remarkable Thing. So I think this is definitely worth your time. I really like this. I went in with really low expectations and it very much exceeded them. I think I gave this like a 4.5 stars or something. Really liked this book. And then the next last sci-fi I have on this list is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. And y'all know I recommend this book so much. It's so batshit crazy, and I didn't understand what was happening for most of it because the characters didn't understand what was happening for most of it, but it was so fun and I absolutely loved it. So yes, this is worth your time if you want a weird, like super personality filled sci-fi that is a sci-fi fantasy. This one's a sci-fi fantasy because it's got like necromancers in space, which is so fun. Oh my god, I love this book. Yes, 100%. This is worth your time. Do it up. Read it. It's so good. I can't wait to keep reading this series. Oh, it's so good. Now let's go into my last category, which is fantasy. All right, first and foremost, we get The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This one, I didn't love. I was expecting to be so attached to the characters, but there was such a distance between me and them that I just didn't care about them like at all. And that's like one of the biggest things that I need in a fantasy book. I need to be able to latch onto the characters and to care about them in any way, to be moved in any way. I just wasn't with The Poppy War. So I'm gonna say no, this is not worth your time if you are on the fence about it. If you are like so into it and you're so excited about this book, give it a try because a lot of people really love it. But if you're on the fence, I'd say no. There's a better one, and it's called She Who Became the Sun, which is a similarly framed book where both these books follow a young girl from childhood up into a big kind of war system near the end of it. They were very similar in that regard, but I enjoyed She Who Became the Sun so much more than The Poppy War. I don't know why. Like, I liked The Poppy War. It was fine. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars. But She Who Became the Sun, I gave 4.5 stars. Loved it. So if you're on the fence about The Poppy War because it is super dark and just awful to get through, try She Who Became the Sun because I love that book so much. I want to reread it because I feel like I'm going to get even more out of it on a reread. It's one of those books. So yeah, Poppy War, not necessarily worth your time, but She Who Became the Sun, 100% worth your time. Do it. Do it up. It's so good. Then we have Vicious by V.E. Schwab, which I read this year. Finally, I've been meaning to read this one for a while. And this one I'd say is worth your time. I think I did enjoy it. It didn't blow me away as much as I was hoping it would. I feel like V.E. Schwab's books have a tendency to do that. They don't like, I want to love them so much. I want to give them 5 stars, but then I get to the end of it. I'm like, that was more of a 3.5, 4 star for me. It wasn't like blowing me away in any way. So there's that. But this one was very fun, and I really enjoyed the anti-hero look, the like villain look at the characters. It was very good. I liked it. And it was plotted in a way that wasn't like a traditional action novel. You know, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I think it is worth your time. I think you're going to really enjoy it. I think a lot of people would really enjoy it. Even if people don't really love fantasy, I think it's a good kind of a gateway book, more so than her Dark Shade of Magic series, because Dark Shade of Magic is very fantasy. This one I think is a better gateway book into adult fantasy, because it's very like minimally fantasy, right? It deals with people who are in our world who are extraordinary and who have had near-death experiences that have thus given them powers. So kind of superhero-y, very, very interesting. Next, we have Jade City, which is the Greenbone Saga, and I think this one is definitely worth your time. Oh man, I loved this book. It was just fabulous. It was just fabulous, and I'm so excited to see where this trilogy goes, because I'm currently making my way through the second book, which I'm not liking as much as the first, I will say, but I know that it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be fantastic. That, because just from the way that the third book is being hyped on the internet, I think it's going to be pretty good. But yes, I think it's worth your time. If you're looking for a really gritty fantasy that's not, again, not really a fantasy in like the otherworldly sense. It's set in a city that is very much like, I don't know, it's very based in real. The only extraordinary or magical thing is the jade, which gives people these powers and expanded speed and lightness and deftness to fight, and there's like gang wars over this jade and stuff. So I really liked it, and I found it wonderful. So definitely worth your time. The next one is a typical high fantasy, and that is Eye of the World, which I read this year, which is definitely a super popular fantasy series. I read the first 2 books, currently halfway through the third, and I think this is worth your time. I do. I really do. If you were on the fence about picking up The Eye of the World, which is the first one, I think you might find it fun. Yes, there are pretty slow parts in it, so I do recommend the audiobook over anything else, but I think it's worth it because Robert Jordan just knows how to write a fantasy book, and he gets better and better with every book. So I think the first one is good. It's quite good. The second one is very good. The Great Hunt is very good. And so far the third one is pretty good as well. So I'm hoping that this just keeps going up from here for all, yes, 15 books. So it is a commitment, but I think it's worth it. So far, I think it's worth it. Come back to me in about 1.5 years, hopefully, and I'll let you know if it's still worth it. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about The City of Brass, which is the first in the Deva Bad trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. And man, this was good, and I think it is most definitely worth your time. Ooh, it was good. If you're looking for a fantasy that is inspired by Middle Eastern mythology and landscape, it's set in a like magical Cairo kind of place. It was very, very good. And I cannot wait to see where it goes from here, because I've only heard that the trilogy gets better as like from the first book on. So I'm very excited, and I'm very happy that I finally decided and finally stuck with it to get through The City of Brass, which is the first book. So yeah, I do think this is worth your time. I think I gave this one 4 stars. Very, very much so worth your time. Anyways, my friends, thank you so much for hanging out with me. My voice is hurting, so I'm gonna go. But thank you so much for hanging out with me. Let me know down below if there are any other popular books that you think I should try in 2022. Let me know what you think I might like. If you have a sense from this video of books that are popular that I have read and liked, Let me know down below what else I should read, because y'all know I'm always here for opening up my TBR and making it extremely long. So thank you so much for watching, my guys. I will catch you in another video very soon. Stay kind and keep on reading.